So here is the Maintenance Pro. All right, so this is the free downloadable trial version that you get 30 days of if you were to download it. Right, you can change which version you have. I'm just going to stick with the professional. For the 3 different versions, it gives me the most access to the different features. So we're on the home screen here. And this may be similar to what you've seen at work. Maybe you've never seen one of these. What you see in the future may resemble something like this, or it may not look anything like this. The one that I'm most familiar with is more of no graphical displays, nothing. Pretty much this whole part of the screen wouldn't exist. It's more of just this menu system that you'd see on the left-hand side here. And you'd have to know exactly where you want to go. It wouldn't have words that are helpful like equipment and work orders, inventory, that sort of thing. It was basically these different codes that represented those, but you had to know what those codes meant. Anyway, so in this case, this one's nice because it gives you this home screen that kind of shows you some information that you may want to know readily. So as far as the equipment due, this little tab here shows the equipment that has some work that needs to be completed either soon or maybe it's overdue. Right. So by clicking on it, you can see these would be the pieces of equipment, and this would be their status of the different PMs that they have set up for them. This inventory, so they use the term inventory for basically like your spare parts or your parts warehouse, something like that. All right. So they're not talking about the actual pieces of equipment that's installed out in the field. This is just maybe things like belts and valves and fittings, that sort of thing, right? Just kind of the spare parts that you would house in your facility. This one tells you that, I guess, how many you have low stock of, right? When you set up these inventory items, you can put a threshold in there for how many do I want to keep at one time? How many do I want to have on hand? And once I get below that number, to have it tell you to reorder, right? So these are at that point where we're lower than we want to have on hand, so we need to put in an order for them. The employees tab. So more than likely, there's some sort of employee section in the CMMS. I don't know why there wouldn't be one at all. But the nice thing about this one is you can set it up to monitor certifications of employees. That's kind of what this is showing here, is that Roger Daniels is overdue on the hazardous materials certification. All right. If your facility were to utilize something like this, it's probably talking about things that aren't necessarily certified within your facility, I guess. So to kind of explain that, the last place I worked, we'd be getting these yearly trainings, right? So hazardous materials, training on various chemicals, safety, fire safety. And so it would be a separate program that would automatically kind of shoot you an email saying, hey, you need to do this training again because your 1 year has passed or soon will be. All right. So I think in this scenario, you'd want to do something that's outside of that additional program. Maybe you had a particular license or something like that that you wanted to keep track of, and you could have it kind of indicate to you or to maybe your supervisor that, hey, I need to go take my training to maintain my certification or my license. And then over here on the right, so we see these 2 little graphs talk about the work orders. All right, so there's 2 of them that have been started or initiated, kind of however you want to think about it. So you can go into those 2 directly from the home screen. And this other one is the purchase orders. And so we use purchase orders to replace parts, really to pay for everything, right? If you need to pay for contractors or you need to pay for a new motor or new valves, all these are going to be done through what they call purchase orders. This one tells us that we have one ongoing. So that's what they call a requisition. That's kind of the first process, is you basically request these parts, and then at some point it'll be approved, and then it'll turn into basically an actual purchase order. And then at some point you'll receive your parts, and you'll document it by receiving them in the program, and so on. So this takes us to the purchase orders that are currently active. So again, this is just a home screen, kind of giving you an update to things that may be important kind of at this moment, right? What's exactly the most important, that's going to be dependent upon where you work, right? It could be the work orders that are due or coming due, or maybe some inventory that you're low on, that sort of thing. Over here on the left, we have this menu tree, allows us to get into the different categories of the software itself. Again, I'd say that's pretty helpful from what I've had experience with. Something else this software has that I would have benefited from greatly had ours had it, is this little help. It's actually fairly good. It, for the most part, tells you what you need to know and how to do it. There's one thing that I wasn't able to figure out, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a bit. But the fact that it has help and the fact that it's pretty decent, you know, that's always a plus. Let's see, one other thing about this software in particular is that it's kind of designed for fleet management. So, you know, a company that has vehicles, forklifts, you know, rental equipment, that's kind of what this one's all about. So that's why you'll see a lot of the information about mileage when we get into the equipment. Let's see. From the setup, I'm not going to go through all of these, but kind of the initial settings, this is where you can change the company name and provide information about your company. One of the most important things, I would say, for the software itself, in this case, they call it locations. But this is kind of the structure of your facility, how you want it to be laid out. All right, so or say this is our facility, and then underneath it, you would categorize the facility, kind of what makes sense to that place, right? So maybe this is the production floor, or you could say production, or maybe this is plant 1, plant 2, but you create these different locations in the facility. And why it's important is because when you create equipment, you're going to tie the pieces of equipment to these different locations. And typically, trying to find your equipment is easiest if you're able to sort and filter by locations, and that information is accurate and makes sense. All right, so I would say one of the most important steps is identifying how you want this structure to be, because all your equipment's eventually going to get tied to one of these locations. And as far as people finding it, it's very helpful. So each one of these little points below the company name, so general equipment, the plant, the production equipment, that's a location. All right, and within those locations, we have categories, right? So they have, in this case, air compressors, forklifts, and welders. All right, so I'll just create a new location. It should be one of these, like a new bullet point, if you will. Let's just call it will be super generic. I'll just leave it as location. You can change the icon. In this case, maybe the one you have or will have in the future may not have that ability. With this software, if you click save, it's like clicking OK in most other programs. If you click save plus, it's basically like saying, okay, plus I want to add a new one, right? So I'll click save, all right? And now we've created our new location. It automatically gave us one category, kind of just default in there. We can change that to whatever you want, whatever fits your facility. I'll just say north, south, east, and west. So if I click save, it's going to save category 1 as north. If I click save plus, it's going to allow me to create a new one. All right, so now we have a new location created, the new categories within it. And this is where I could not figure out how to do something. I'll show you what I mean. So within the plant location, they've created a category called cooling and ventilation, right? But they've also been able to create subcategories within here. Now, I've tried everything I could think of to create a subcategory for, say, east, but I cannot figure out how to do it. If this were my actual software that I was using, that my facility was using, this would be a very high priority for me to know how to do this, right? I'd be contacting tech support to figure it out, because again, the whole idea is, how can I drill this down to be really specific, right? I don't want just to say all of my equipment is in this building. I would like to define it, whether it's using directions like north, south, east, or west, or nicknames within the facility. This corner is plant 1, the other corner is plant 2, and so on. So for me, at least in my opinion, it'd be really important to figure out how I could, again, be able to create subcategories here like they've somehow figured out how to do. Aside from this location, everything else that's in here has all been in there from default. Right? So all I did was install the program. I haven't added anything to it. It just has come with, some inventory, some equipment, some work orders, that sort of thing that they've created. So this would take, I would think, some forethought, right? Some planning before you get into it. You want to have this kind of ironed out as to how you're going to lay your facility out. It's going to be not that much fun to have to change in the future, particularly if any length of time has passed and you feel like I want to rename these things or restructure it. If it's been a year or 2 years and you go start renaming things or changing how it functions, then everybody else that works there, it's been using it for 2 years, is going to be fairly upset because they've figured out where something is and now you moved it. It's not to say you shouldn't change it if it should be changed, but just know that the best you can get it implemented from the very beginning, the better it will be. Okay, so we've added some locations. Again, we have this menu structure on the left, lets us navigate to all these different tabs pretty easily. We'll check out the equipment. All right, so this is all the equipment that they have installed by default. We can go through and delete all these things if we want to. I'm just going to leave them. In the grand scheme of things, in most facilities, this is really nothing. This is no equipment, right? They have 12 things listed. You're more than likely going to be in the hundreds to thousands of pieces of equipment. That's why I say it's important to be able to define them as best you can by a certain location and then sort by that location, right? So this one has a few different ways to sort. This little drop down here lets me pick some kind of different areas. If we go to the location one that we just created, there's no equipment in there, right? We just created it. Nothing's been assigned to it. So this is kind of one way. These are those, broad locations. So it may be helpful, but more than likely you are going to still have an abundance of equipment in each one of those locations. So they have this other little icon here you can click on. And now I can do a little better filtering. So if I wanted to look specifically at general equipment, but the forklifts, right, we can just filter it that way. Right now I can cut down on how many pieces of equipment that I see at one time. So let's create a piece of equipment. You have a couple options to do it. Up here on the upper right, you have the new. You could also click the plus here. Either one's going to do the same thing. Within this window, so this is where you're going to basically set all of, what the important information is about that piece of equipment. Starting with, in this case, they call it the unit. That name may change. This is really the only thing that you have to put in here to create the piece of equipment. But this should be some unique identifier for the facility, right? So it may just be that when you start off, the first piece of equipment you get is 1, and you kind of go from there to, that's kind of the process that we started with. But we started with an 8-digit code. Can't even see how many zeros that is. And then so my next one would be 1000001, right? Again, this is something you want to think about beforehand, so you have an idea of how you want to make this happen. But this should be, again, just something unique to that piece of equipment. Every piece of equipment that comes in is going to have its own unique number or value, however you dub to do it. Numbers seem to make the most sense because it's sequential, and really it's not really a nickname. It's just going to be what the software uses to know what this device is. So the make. So I just found a pump online a little while, or a couple days ago. I know it's a Grundfos. So anything that you've created in this field, it will store it for future use. So Grundfos originally wasn't there, but if I were to continually add Grundfos pumps, every time I came in here and started typing Grundfos in, it would kind of try to autofill it, and I'd be able to select it from there. So it's going to retain that information. The model, I can't really remember. I think it's MQ.